Hi, this is the Professional Amateur Hour coming to you with another review. This week, Leo sent me a screener for Death Among the Pines, and this 2025 film was directed by Nathan Sepka, and he actually stars in it as well, along with Nicolette, McKeown, and Stephen Kerr, among others, of course. So what is the story of Death Among the Pines? Well, this one follows this woman as she lives in kind of a remote cottage in Scotland, and she doesn't have like a TV or a phone, just listens to the radio. And during one storm, this stranger shows up at her door and kind of convinces her to let him inside. And she, gives him food, gives him tea, that type of stuff. But then it turns out that there's actually a manhunt for a murderer going on as well during this night. And so is that the guy? Well, for that, you have to watch the movie and find out. All right, so let's discuss this film. So what works with it? Well, with this one, I gotta say, I enjoyed the overall story of this one. I think it's a pretty well written story because the characters themselves are quite deep. As you get to know them, there are more things that are revealed and things change and things are, flipped on their head and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different things with the characters and of course the story that goes along with it that is pretty interesting. There are many cases where things are not what they seem, and that adds a certain intrigue to it where you don't necessarily know all of the twists and turns. There were quite a few that I could have never have predicted. Some that I certainly predicted right out of the gate, but some of them, no way. There was a lot of interesting things that go on in this one. Other than that, I thought it was just a well put together movie. Like the lighting is really well done. It kind of reminds me of that Lifetime movie lighting where everything is just kind of well done. And that is extended throughout the whole movie. So everything is just well done throughout the whole thing. The lighting, the shooting, certainly the sound even works. So it's just, a well done movie. And another thing I enjoyed was kind of that Scottish slang that they have in this one. Just kind of some of the lines, I was like, oh, what does that even mean? Like they were talking about like paying each other, but it's like paying each other a visit or something. So it's just kind of fun to see kind of that Scottish accent. There's not too many, movies that I see out of Scotland. So this one was certainly a little treat. Another thing I liked about this movie was that it didn't overstay its welcome. Like many, low budget movies, sometimes they kind of pad the running time with just kind of filler stuff. And this one does have that low budget element where it is mostly people just talking in rooms, but none of it just seems like it's padding the run time. It all seems like it's for a purpose and with direction even. So that was, I think, appreciated, as a viewer of this movie. I think that brings me to what doesn't work with this film. Well, this one is, a low budget movie, and we're no strangers to low budget movies around here, but it does suffer from some of those elements that are put into a low budget movie. For example, the pacing is kind of slow, I would say, because it's just talking in rooms. Everybody is just a person talking to another person in a room. They, add mystery and intrigue about what they're talking about. When's your husband coming home? What's their husband do? That type of stuff. But it's essentially just people talking in rooms, talking in the kitchen, and then, go have a shower up. Now we're talking in the bedroom, and now we're talking in the living room, and now we're having some tea and biscuits and talking as well. So it's just people talking in rooms. Like the whole thing is done with these three actors because I think a policeman shows up or something, but they're just talking in different rooms in this cottage, and that's most of the film. They do have some elements where they do go outside, but for the most part, it's just people talking in rooms. And I know that's not, the most exciting thing out there, but what they're talking about does add that intrigue. So it is, I would say, probably a double-edged sword. It is, good writing, but at the same time, it's just talking in rooms. So yeah, it certainly is a double-edged sword. And so would I recommend this film? Well, I would say if you like kind of that murder mystery type of stuff, this one should be right up your alley. It is a little bit slower, so you do have a tendency to reach for your phone here or there. But for the most part, what they're talking about and how it all kind of develops and then even in the end comes together is interesting enough for you to watch for, the hour and 20 minutes that it is. So, press play if you want. And as for a rating, well, I gotta give it the 5.6 because I thought it was better than average, but not above average, if that makes sense. And with that being said, I think that's all I wanted to say. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.